Have you ever felt as if something inside you is quietly ending, even while your outer life looks perfectly normal? Not a dramatic ending, not a collapse, something softer than that, stranger than that, as if the old version of you is losing its grip and a deeper presence is beginning to breathe beneath your skin. You still wake up in the same room. You still answer messages, pay bills, walk through ordinary mornings, and yet, somewhere in the silence between one thought and the next, you feel it. A distance growing between you and the life that once defined you. Many people describe this season as loneliness, burnout, or emotional exhaustion. But some spiritual traditions offer another possibility. They suggest that there are moments in a soul's journey when the world starts to feel thinner, as if the visible life can no longer fully contain what is awakening within. And if that is true, then some of the confusion you feel may not be confusion at all. It may be preparation, a quiet rearrangement, a sacred unmaking before a final becoming. Because sometimes, before a soul enters what some believe to be its last earthly chapter, it begins to remember. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep does not touch. Not the tiredness of work, not even the tiredness of pain. Something older, deeper, a weariness that feels as if it has traveled with you across many invisible winters. If you have felt this, you may have tried to explain it away. You told yourself you were overwhelmed, disappointed, emotionally drained, and perhaps some of that is true. But many people who walk deeply spiritual paths speak of another kind of exhaustion, one that arrives when the soul is no longer willing to keep feeding illusions that once helped it survive. One of the first signs that an awakened soul may be preparing for its final life is that it begins to lose its appetite for what used to hypnotize it. Validation no longer tastes the same. Competition feels hollow. The endless race to prove, acquire, impress, dominate, and outperform begins to look like a game played by people who have forgotten they are going to die. This does not mean the person becomes lazy or detached from life. It means something more unsettling. The old rewards stop working, and that can be terrifying at first. Because when the world's usual currencies lose value, there is a period where you may feel unmotivated, disoriented, even broken. The things that once made you feel important now feel strangely theatrical. You can still play the role. You can still smile at the right moments, say the right things, dress the part, move through the routine. But inwardly, something has already stepped back. You are no longer fully convinced by the performance. Some traditions would call this disillusionment. Others would call it spiritual maturity. And perhaps it is both. Because before a soul can live differently, it often has to see clearly. And seeing clearly is not always beautiful in the beginning. Sometimes it feels like grief. You begin to notice how much of human life is built on fear. Fear of being unseen, fear of not mattering, fear of being left behind, fear of being ordinary, fear of aging, fear of silence, fear of death. And once you see this, really see it, you cannot unsee it. It changes the way you move through conversations. It changes the way you listen. It changes the way you look at ambition, relationships, conflict, and even success itself. This is why the awakening of the soul does not always arrive as bliss. Sometimes it arrives as disenchantment. The glitter falls off things, noise becomes heavier, crowds feel emptier. You may find yourself withdrawing from spaces that once energized you, not because you have become cold, but because you can no longer pretend that superficiality nourishes you. There are people who mistake this stage for depression, and in some cases the two can overlap. Real emotional suffering should never be romanticized. But alongside the heaviness, there is often another signal, a subtle, undeniable pull toward truth. Even if truth costs you comfort, even if it dismantles your old identity, even if it leaves you standing in a life that no longer fits, that pull matters. Because the awakened soul is not simply trying to escape the world, it is trying to stop lying to itself inside the world. And that is a profound difference. It no longer wants shiny substitutes for meaning. It wants what is real, what lasts, what remains when applause fades, beauty changes, relationships shift, and all the names you built for yourself eventually dissolve into dust. Some people reach this threshold after loss, a death, a betrayal, a collapse of the future they had planned so carefully. Others arrive here without any dramatic event at all. They simply wake up one day and realize that the life everyone told them to want no longer answers the question their soul has started asking. And that question is dangerous, because once it enters you, it will not leave. It follows you into your work, your relationships, your habits, your dreams. It whispers through beautiful moments and painful ones alike. Is this all? Is this truly what life is for? Why do I feel as if I am remembering something I cannot name? That question may be the beginning of everything. Because the first sign is not certainty, it is holy dissatisfaction. The old world loses its spell, and somewhere beneath the confusion, a quieter world begins to call your name. But if that calling is real, it does not stop at disillusionment. It begins to reshape the way you love, the way you suffer, and the way you recognize the strange people who seem to arrive in your life at exactly the right time. And that is where the second sign begins to reveal itself. Another sign often described in spiritual traditions is this: your relationships begin to change in ways you never planned. Not always dramatically, not always with conflict, but unmistakably. People you once felt deeply connected to may begin to feel distant, even when nothing obvious has happened. Conversations that used to last for hours now feel strangely flat. Shared interests disappear. Certain dynamics reveal themselves as performances held together by old wounds, mutual dependency, or the fear of being alone. This can be one of the most painful parts of awakening, because when a soul begins to prepare for a deeper chapter, it often becomes less compatible with connections built on unconscious patterns. If a relationship depended on your silence, your self-betrayal, your emotional overgiving, or your willingness to stay small, that relationship may begin to tremble. Not because love was fake, but because it may have been mixed with survival. And survival creates bonds that can feel like destiny. There are people who enter your life to mirror your wounds. People who awaken your need to be chosen, rescued, admired, pursued, understood, or saved. These relationships can feel intense, magnetic, unforgettable. But intensity is not always truth. Sometimes it is simply unhealed pain, recognizing itself in another form. As the soul awakens, it begins to notice this. You begin to sense when you are being loved for who you are, and when you are being used to complete someone else's unfinished story. You begin to hear the difference between genuine intimacy and emotional hunger wearing the mask of intimacy. And once again, this clarity is not immediately comforting. It can break your heart. It can leave you grieving people who are still alive. It can leave you missing versions of relationships that never fully existed outside of hope. But something else begins to happen too. You may find yourself drawn toward fewer people, but with greater sincerity. Your soul becomes less interested in being surrounded and more interested in being seen. Less interested in attention and more interested in resonance. A quiet conversation with one honest person begins to feel more nourishing than a room full of approval. Presence becomes more important than excitement. Truth more important than chemistry. Peace more important than passion without depth. Some spiritual teachings suggest that when the soul nears its final lessons, it becomes exquisitely sensitive to distortion. Lies feel louder, manipulation feels heavier. Energy you used to tolerate now feels almost unbearable. You may walk away from dynamics that others still consider normal. Gossip, power games, emotional inconsistency, shallow seduction, hidden cruelty disguised as humor. Suddenly, your nervous system cannot pretend anymore. And that sensitivity is not weakness. It may be refinement, because the awakened soul does not just crave love, it craves coherence. It wants what is clean, what is integrated, what does not split the heart from the spirit. It no longer wants to be entangled in bonds that require self-abandonment. even if loneliness follows, even if the silence after certain endings feels immense. This is often the season where solitude becomes both wound and medicine. At first, solitude can feel like rejection, a frightening emptiness, a sense that you are being removed from the life everyone else seems to inhabit with ease. But if you stay there long enough, something begins to change. The solitude becomes less like exile and more like a temple. You start hearing your own inner voice again. You begin to recognize which desires are truly yours and which were inherited from family, culture, fear, or old pain. In the stillness, your soul stops echoing other people's expectations. And then, there are the rare encounters. Many people on spiritual paths speak of meeting certain souls during this phase who feel strangely familiar. Not necessarily romantic, not necessarily permanent, but significant. A teacher, a friend, a stranger, someone whose words seem to arrive from somewhere beyond ordinary timing. Someone who sees through your surface life and speaks directly to the hidden part of you that has been waiting, perhaps for years, to be named. Whether one interprets this psychologically, spiritually, or symbolically, such encounters can feel catalytic. They do not complete you, they reveal you to yourself. That may be the deeper purpose of changing relationships during awakening, not to isolate you forever, but to strip away everything false enough that you can finally meet what is true. The love that remains after illusion falls away is quieter, but it is cleaner, less dramatic, more sacred, less intoxicating, more real. And once your soul starts valuing truth over attachment, another shift often appears, not just in who you love, but in how you experience time itself. Memories become charged, dreams grow more vivid. Certain moments feel as if they are speaking in symbols. Life starts to look less random than it once did. And when that begins, many people feel they are standing at the threshold of the third sign. There comes a point in some awakenings when life no longer feels entirely literal. The visible world remains the same, and yet something about it becomes porous. A dream lingers all day with unusual emotional force. A sentence overheard in passing feels like an answer to a question you never spoke aloud. You think of someone, and they suddenly appear. You are drawn to a book, a place, a memory, a symbol, and it feels less like choice than recognition. Of course, not every coincidence is a cosmic message. The human mind is deeply skilled at pattern making. It searches for meaning because meaning helps us survive chaos. But even allowing for that, many people report periods in life when symbols seem to gather around them with unusual intensity. Some interpret this spiritually. Others see it as the subconscious rising into awareness. Either way, the experience can feel transformative. If an awakened soul is preparing for what some traditions call its final earthly cycle, one sign may be an increasing intimacy with the unseen layers of experience, not certainty, not supernatural performance. Intimacy, a sense that life is speaking in more than one language at once. Dreams, especially, can become charged during these periods. You may begin having dreams that feel wiser than your waking mind. Dreams that do not merely replay anxiety, but carry a strange emotional intelligence. You meet people long gone. You revisit childhood homes, but they are filled with symbols that do not belong to childhood. You walk through doors, descend staircases, cross rivers, lose your voice, find your voice, miss a train, return to a light, hold a child, bury a name, shed a skin. These images can feel deeply personal, but also larger than the personal, as if your psyche, or perhaps your soul, is trying to translate something too ancient for ordinary language. Some traditions regard dreams as messages from the deeper self. Others warn against taking them too literally. Both views have wisdom. The point is not blind belief. The point is attention. Because people in these phases often discover that their inner world is no longer random noise. It has become a place of instruction. You may also feel an altered relationship with time. The past rises unexpectedly, not to torment you, but to be understood differently. Old wounds resurface, but with a new layer of compassion. Events that once seemed meaningless reveal their hidden architecture. You start seeing how certain heartbreaks redirected you, how certain losses protected you, how certain delays ripened you for truths you would have rejected earlier in life. This can produce a strange emotional state, grief and gratitude living in the same body at the same time. And perhaps that is one of the clearest signs of maturation in the soul. You no longer divide your life so easily into blessings and mistakes. You begin to see a hidden conversation between the two. Not that everything happens for a neat reason, not that suffering should be justified, but that consciousness itself can deepen through what once felt unbearable. The soul becomes capable of holding paradox. This growing intimacy with the symbolic also changes how you move through ordinary days. Sunlight through a curtain feels almost like a visitation. Music opens a memory older than the moment itself. A quiet walk becomes more meaningful than a crowded celebration. You begin to value stillness, not because it is empty, but because it is full of subtle things you used to overlook. And yet, there is a danger here. When the unseen begins to feel near, the ego can try to turn awakening into identity. Specialness, superiority, the fantasy of being chosen while others are asleep. That is one of the oldest traps on any spiritual path. True awakening tends to do the opposite. It humbles, it softens, it makes a person less performative, not more, less obsessed with appearing enlightened, more willing to be honest about confusion, tenderness, and imperfection. Because the deeper the soul goes, the less it needs to be extraordinary in public. It becomes more devoted to sincerity in private. That humility matters, because what comes next is perhaps the hardest sign of all. Not vivid dreams, not synchronicities, not heightened symbolism, but the soul's willingness to face its remaining shadows without turning away. And if a person truly is nearing the final lessons of a lifetime, that confrontation will not be optional. It will arrive, quietly or violently, through relationships, illness, loss, memory, silence, or the collapse of a false self. The doorway will open. And when it does, the question is no longer whether life is speaking to you. The question is whether you are ready to hear what it has come to say. Many people imagine spiritual awakening as a movement toward light. And in one sense, it is. But anyone who has gone far enough knows that light alone does not transform the soul. Sooner or later, awakening becomes an encounter with everything in you that still seeks control, still fears surrender, still clings to resentment, pride, guilt, image, and the subtle intoxication of being the wounded one forever. This may be the most profound sign that an awakened soul is preparing for its final life. It stops running from inner death. Not physical death, but the death of false identity. There are seasons where life seems determined to take from you every mask you used to survive. The mask of being strong all the time, the mask of being needed, the mask of being misunderstood in order to feel special, the mask of perfection, the mask of cynicism, the mask of endless giving that secretly hides a fear of receiving, the mask of spirituality itself, when spirituality becomes another costume the ego wears to avoid being truly changed. At this stage, what hurts is not only what happened to you. What hurts is seeing clearly how much of yourself was built around those wounds, and that can feel devastating. Because healing is not merely letting pain go, it is also grieving the identity you made from pain. Some spiritual teachings describe this as a purification. Others might call it integration. In psychological language, it can resemble the painful process of bringing shadow material into consciousness. Whatever the framework, the experience is similar. The soul begins to choose truth over self-protection, even when truth burns. You may start noticing how often fear has narrated your choices, how many times you confused longing with intuition, how often your need for control disguised itself as wisdom, how much energy you spent managing how others saw you, how many years were shaped by an invisible bargain. If I can just get this one thing, this one person, this one victory, this one identity, then I will finally be at peace. And then one day, something in you sees the bargain for what it is. Endless, unfulfilling, a hunger that keeps changing its name. That realization can break you open, but it can also free you. Because once the soul truly understands that no external arrangement can save it from the work of awakening, a different kind of life becomes possible. A simpler life, perhaps, but also a deeper one. You begin to release your addiction to noise. Your need to win every argument weakens. Your craving to be fully understood by everyone starts to fade. You no longer need every chapter to look impressive. You become more interested in being aligned than admired. Forgiveness can begin here, though not as performance, not as forced positivity. Real forgiveness is often slow. It may begin with the humble recognition that carrying hatred binds you to what hurt you. It may begin when you finally see the frightened humanity in those who wounded you without excusing what they did. It may begin when you realize that blaming yourself forever is just another way of refusing to step into life again. And perhaps the deepest forgiveness is this: allowing yourself to become someone new. Many people resist that. They remain loyal to their former suffering because at least it is familiar. But if the soul is nearing completion of a long journey, it often becomes willing to make a sacred exchange. The old story for a truer one, not a perfect one, a truer one. That truer life has certain qualities. It is quieter inside, more spacious, less reactive, more compassionate, but also more boundaried, more loving, but less attached to possession, more present to beauty, more at peace with mystery, more able to sit with death, not as a morbid obsession, but as a teacher that clarifies what matters. This is why many elders on spiritual paths speak less about visions and more about simplicity, a clear conscience, a softened heart, an uncluttered mind, the ability to be with what is, the courage to love without trying to own, the humility to say I do not know and yet remain open, the willingness to serve life in small, sincere ways without needing a spotlight. If there is such a thing as a final earthly life, perhaps it does not announce itself through grand miracles. Perhaps it reveals itself through ripeness. A soul becoming less interested in drama and more devoted to essence, less fascinated by identity and more anchored in presence, less afraid of endings because it has finally begun to understand that every sacred transformation asks something to die before something truer can live. And maybe that is what has been happening to you all along. Maybe the exhaustion, the changing relationships, the vivid inner life, the painful clarity, the dissolving masks, the strange pull toward peace, all of it has not been punishment. Maybe it has been preparation, not proof of superiority, not evidence of special status, but the quiet maturity of a soul that has suffered enough illusions to finally hunger for what cannot be taken away. And if that is true, then the last stage is not about escape from life. It is about entering life so deeply, so honestly, so awake, that nothing false can survive your presence anymore. Perhaps the most beautiful thing about awakening is that it rarely arrives with a trumpet. It comes like evening light across a familiar floor, revealing what was always there but never fully seen. It comes in the ache that no longer lets you live on the surface, in the silence that begins to feel less like emptiness and more like home, in the strange mercy of losing what could not follow you into truth. Maybe your soul is not falling apart. Maybe it is laying down unnecessary weight. Maybe this season of distance, grief, sensitivity, and longing is not a detour from your life, but the deepest entrance into it. Many traditions believe that before a soul completes a great cycle, it becomes simpler, humbler, clearer. It stops asking life to entertain it and starts allowing life to transform it. So if you feel different lately, softer in some places, more tired in others, less willing to betray yourself for belonging, less enchanted by noise, more drawn to what is eternal and quiet, do not rush to label it too quickly. Sit with it, listen to it. There may be something ancient moving through you with astonishing tenderness. And maybe the real sign is this. For the first time, you are no longer trying to become someone else. You are finally becoming true. If some part of this felt uncomfortably familiar, or strangely like something you have been living but never had words for, share your experience in the comments. I would love to know which sign stayed with you the longest. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden layers of soul, consciousness, dreams, and the quiet mysteries of human awakening, stay close. There is always another door waiting to open.